excited to be here this morning with you. Know that you and I have been really inspired by hearing other stories about activation, and people sharing those stories is obviously what's helped us in our journeys to doing activation and getting started. So we decided it was high time to do our own story and share a bit about your journey. So I'm really excited. My name's Liko Inkersell. I live in Oamaru, and this is Rachel Dalziel, and Rachel is up in North Canterbury. So Rachel, I remember chatting to you right at the beginning when you were a very busy mum of 3 children, and you were experiencing some challenges with Freddie, your oldest, and we obviously shared with you about activation back then. So I'm really excited to learn a bit more about your journey. Just before we begin, I'm just going to say a short disclaimer in that the Life Vantage products can't claim to treat, cure, prevent or mitigate any illness or disease. But yeah, and this is Rachel's obviously personal story with Freddie, and we'll let the rest let the rest carry on. So Rachel, Freddie was diagnosed with autism and high traits of ADHD last year. Are you able to tell me a bit about Freddie's journey to when he was diagnosed?
Absolutely. So Freddie's 7. He had quite a traumatic birth, and I guess he's been a bit more sensitive to the world. He really thrived on routine, and anything out of routine or with change really threw him. He was our first baby, so you don't really know any different. Before he was to the little preschool that we went to, they actually picked up that he wasn't responding to his name, and he had quite a delay in his speech. So he actually got speech therapy quite early, so when he was about 2, and later on we had early intervention. So the reason we had the early intervention is he had really bad spatial awareness. He used to struggle with mat time. He would walk the perimeter and couldn't cope with sitting on the mat. He struggled with social skills with other children. If there was play and they wanted to come into his play, he just wouldn't cope unless he was leading the play. And he also, so he was having quite a rough time with that. So we actually worked with the preschool and with early intervention, this guy called Alon, who was amazing, and he was very non-compliant as well. So we worked with them really well between the 3 of us, and then we actually got him into quite a good space, ready to start school. So he actually started school a bit later due to lockdown, so he was about 5.5. And he actually did really well because it was a sort of a new school, and you know in there, and we'd moved as well. But then as the year kind of progressed, things got a lot harder for him, and he was really starting to struggle. And then by the beginning of 2021, he started a new class with a new teacher, and then the wheels really, really started to fall off for him.
Oh, wow, that must have been tough. And amazing you for being proactive with looking for alternatives and trying to search for answers when you discovered that things perhaps weren't right, and there was some other things you could do. So tell me about Freddie's struggles when he did start school.
Yeah, so he didn't cope with sitting on the mat at all. He used to hide his head a lot, and he'd curl up into a wee ball. He'd spend a lot of the time under the table. And the issue was he'd go under the table where the other children were sitting. So they did actually set up like a calm corner for him to go to, and he would go under the table when he got overwhelmed, which was a lot. He wouldn't listen to instructions. He'd have meltdowns over very small things. Really struggled with emotional regulation and sharing, and he was very obsessive with trains. So he's always had obsessions. So it was tractors and then trains and the colour green. And it just really affected how he interacted with the other children. To be honest, it was a really hard time for us as a family. So we had 2 other children. So we had a baby as well as a toddler, and it was, to be honest, I'd be like at a loss, like what am I going to do with this child? Picking him up from school, and he'd have a bad day. So I think it was February, and he just turned 6, and it'd been quite a bad week, I would say. And then the Wednesday, I think it was, the teacher called me to say, please come pick him up. So he'd been fighting with another child, and he was just having a terrible day. So luckily at that time, I'd actually had an appointment for Molly, who was the baby, to go and see a cranial sacral therapist. And I just swapped the 2 out, and I took Freddie instead. I'm a really big fan of cranial treatment. And I've taken Freddie to see this amazing lady called Di since he was like 2 weeks old. And she'd done a lot of work on his kind of cranial base and that's always helped him a lot. And I took him to see Di, and then 2 weeks later, I booked him in to see a kinesiologist called Judy, and I'd also taken him to her before, and they sort of find out what's happening in their body. So he did actually calm down a bit after that, and that did really help. And we did finish the first term quite well. But then actually at the same time, the teacher said to me, this actually could be something medical. And before that, I always thought it was behavioural, and I was quite surprised. So we actually got an appointment with the GP to get a referral for a paediatrician. So yeah, this was a real shock. And after that, I got on Dr. Google, and I thought, oh, maybe he has ADHD, and I didn't really know what he had. But yeah, it was just like, what's wrong with this child? So, how can we help him? So we did actually end term 1 quite well. And then term 2 started off not so good. And then we were sort of back to having some kind of rough days.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big journey for you guys, Rachel, and especially, as you say, with 2 other kids. And I remember, talking to you, right back at the beginning when, Nick first approached you, and, life was definitely busy, you were under a lot of stress, obviously with Freddie's challenges, but then also having 2 other children as well. So tell me, when Nick first approached you, what did you know about NRF2 activation, and what made you make the decision to try it for Freddie?
Yeah, I knew nothing about it. So I saw Nick in February, we caught up, and she sort of told me what she was up to, and then she added me to the Facebook groups. And I would say I was a bit of a lurker, really. I was just in there and read some testimonials. I didn't know what glutathione or oxidative stress, but I did read some testimonials, and I think I just sort of sat there for a bit, kind of watching a bit. And then there was a video that was posted on the page. It was about children with autism and ADHD, and they brain mapped the children, and it was unbelievable. I watched that, and they did a before and after of these children and showed their brains after they'd taken the NRF2. And I think there may have been I can't remember the details, but there was a 4-year-old whose brain had as much oxidative stress as a 45-year-old man or something. And it was unbelievable seeing these brains like light up. And it was a great watch. So Nick actually called me, and we had a really good chat, and I think I chatted to you at the same time about it. And I knew that Nick had some great results with her own family. So I've always been really open to trying things. Like, I've always been open with the cranial and the kinesiologist, or if teachers have said to me, let's have a look at this for Freddie, I've been really open. And I've always wanted to take on other people's knowledge, so I kind of had nothing to lose by trying it, and I really trusted Nick. So I didn't go and research PubMed, and I was just too tired for all that at that time. And I just thought, I'll give it a go. Over the years, I'd given him supplements like L-glutamine and fish oil and probiotics and homeopathic. So I've always been really, really open to trying new things. So just thought, I don't have anything to lose, really.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. And, you know, our health and wellness journeys are a jigsaw puzzle, aren't they? You know,
Yeah.
like it's not one piece that is the answer ever.
Yeah.
You know, like it definitely is about amalgamating different things, you know, to help ourselves and our children. And yeah, I agree. You know, our children are exposed to so many more toxins and, you know, environmental influences than what we were, you know, when we were kids. So yeah, sadly, it is true that, you know, kids do have really high oxidative stress these days. So what is Freddie taking and how does he take it? And you also mentioned that he had ADHD traits. So are you using medications such as Ritalin for Freddie?
Yeah. So at the moment, he's just taking a half NRF2. Occasionally, I do give him a probiotic if he's been sick, and I do occasionally give him the fish oil. But the NRF2, what I do is I break it in half and I grind it and put it into a smoothie, like bananas, blueberry, honey, spinach, coconut milk, and he has that every day. Like it's non-negotiable. He never misses that. So I did actually test him. I got Judy to test him for the NRF1, which is the mitochondria. I know a lot of people with autism have mitochondrial dysfunction as well, but he didn't test for that. So we just doing the NRF2 that tested really well. So we just stuck with that. So we do have the option for him for Ritalin. So they weren't 100% sure with the ADHD. He does have some traits. So what we've decided is that in the future, if Freddie wants to try it, then yes, I'm open to that. I sort of never closed down anything. And then once he's older, he'd be able to say how he's feeling on it. But at the moment, we don't feel like he needs to use it. So we're quite happy with how he is at the moment. So no, we're not using any other medications. It's literally just the NRF2 on a day. Yeah.
And what a great way to get that into Freddie, you know, like to, you know, obviously you're nourishing him with, you know, with the other goodies that you're putting in the smoothie.
Yeah.
And also I know, you know, with some kids as well, they thrive on routine and you know, things are familiar and regular. So, you know, if he knows that that's his smoothie that he has every day, you know, then that's great. You know, then he's going to take it with no fuss and, you know, and it just becomes part of his everyday routine, like brushing your teeth. Because as we know with these products, you know, that routine instruction, taking them every day is so important. You know, it's the cumulative effect. So tell me, what have you noticed in Freddie? What changes have you noticed?
We have had huge changes with Freddie, actually. So he used to really struggle with eye contact. So he really struggled to look you in the eye. And I've since found out that this is quite common for children with autism. And he would struggle to look. He'd be looking all around, and he would chew his clothes a lot. He's always chewing his clothes. So his eye contact is so much better. So much better. He can look you in the eye, talk to you. The chewing has really like gone down a lot. Occasionally he will chew, but not like he was before. Before it was constantly wet clothes. So that's been a couple of things. And then he's a lot calmer. So he used to have some really huge meltdowns, and sometimes it was over very small things. He listens better. So he's not under the table all the time at school, which is really good. So Freddie has a really good immune system too. Like he doesn't get sick much. And if he does, he bounces back really fast. He's in really good health, and he sleeps really well. I know many children with autism struggle with their sleep. But Freddie, he will sleep really, really well. I just want to be clear that, like you said at the beginning, he's not cured. Like he still has autism, but he's just calmer and happier in himself. And we still have to manage things, like if we have a new teacher or a reliever or a new classroom, we still need to help him manage those changes. And he can still have a bad day, like us, if he gets tired, but that's the exception, not the rule. It's not like a daily, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
And we still need to work on like the social things with him and the sharing, but in managing himself. So that's a big focus for us this year. Another thing, when he was diagnosed, they said he had poor gross motor skills when you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, last year, actually I'll show you this. I don't know if you can see. But he got a prize.
A bit higher, yeah. Yeah,
higher.
awesome. Yeah, perfect.
At the show last year for his handwriting.
Great.
Before he really struggled with that. In this term, we just finished term 1, and he's gone up 2 levels in maths, which is really amazing. Yep. And he's made really good progress with his writing. So that's amazing. Like, I always knew he had a bright wee spark, but I remember thinking, how is this child going to learn if he's under the table all day, if he's hiding his head, if he's having a meltdown? So it was quite, I guess, emotional when we did get his diagnosis, but this has just been really good. The year after, it's just been quite life-changing for the family, because he's sort of happier in himself, and we can manage the other things because we understand it more now. But it's made a huge difference for our family and for Freddie. Yeah.
And isn't that, you know, like just providing another piece of the puzzle, you know, isn't that amazing how it can actually help, and also just be able to give them, you know, more tools to be able to go through, you know, and as I talked about before, you know, it's the accumulative effects. So, you know, it's that accumulation. So as you start, you know, getting rid of the oxidative stress out of his body and supporting his body, then, you know, then it all helps. So yeah, that's amazing, Rachel, and good on him for getting a prize for his handwriting. That's really awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah, incredible. So obviously when we first started talking to you, when Nick first started talking to you, you were a mum of 3 and, you know, and pretty exhausted yourself. Did you start taking NRF2 at the same time as you gave it to Freddie? And what made you try it?
I did. So I had a 9-month-old and I was breastfeeding at the time, and I was so tired. It was just, so Molly for the first 6 months always had bad wind, and she would scream in the car, and have to walk her for hours at night to get a wind up, and I had terrible brain fog. Like, I would forget mid-sentence what I was going to say. Plus on top of that, I was dealing with, you know, Freddie's meltdowns and the baby and a toddler, and my husband's actually a truck driver, so he's away a lot. So I was just so tired, and it was just exhausting. And Nick actually said to me, Rach, you should start taking this as well. And I'd always taken breastfeeding multivitamins, so I didn't go and watch 100 videos or research it. I just said, okay, I'll just start taking it. So that's what I did.
Fantastic. And what changes did you notice for yourself?
So it did take a wee while for me to notice anything, but I think that was the timing. The 2 little ones got the RSV virus, so I didn't sleep very much for a bit, and then it's a slow, gradual change. So I slowly noticed I had more energy, felt like my brain was back, I felt like I could think more and wouldn't forget mid-sentence. So I think I'd been telling Nick that I had, for the end of the year accounts for Gareth business, I had to just basically get things together and save them, and it took me all day doing this for the accountant, and it was so simple. It would normally never take that long, but that's just how brain dead I felt at the time. So it's just small things like that. So yeah, it's been really good for us.
Yeah, amazing. And so you became a distributor last year, which is awesome. So what made you decide to start growing this as a business?
Yeah, so I was actually on maternity leave last year, and I was actually made redundant from the role that I had, and I was a bit gutted about that because I really liked working for them, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And then Nick asked me if I wanted to do it, and I thought, actually, why not? It might be a good way to start helping pay towards what we were using. So my husband's also using the product as well, and he's got a really great story too. And I do have another part-time job now with the same company. So I kind of do this in my spare time, what little spare time I kind of have. But this is a bit more of like I'd say more of a passion project, because it's, helping other people, and especially I'd love to reach out to more people with children with autism and ADHD as well.
Yeah, definitely. And when you've got your own experience like you've just had, and and like you've just shared, with Freddie, as you say, it's not going to cure, but it's just actually going to give them something that could potentially help them with day-to-day life, the day-to-day life, and just make things a little bit easier. And if they're going to school 5 days a week, and they're at school, and as you say, if they're under the desk and and really struggling, then they're not going to learn. Whereas if you can give them something that can calm that brain down, and I remember watching Dr. Fannon's video of those of those brainwave scans, and you think, whoa, if kids have got that much noise and information going on in their head, and actually if we can just help settle that down, then then that can definitely make a difference. And agree with you, Rachel. I mean, this is definitely, I don't consider it work either, because I definitely call it a passion project, because it is, you just, when you get good results yourself, and relatively simple, it's relatively simple. If you can build it into your day-to-day routine like you have with Freddie and for yourself, then then and it can make such a big difference, then it's definitely worth sharing with others, and up to them what they decide. So do you have any advice to give to other parents going through the same thing as you, and what would you say about trying it?
You've got nothing to lose by trying it at all, and if it doesn't work, at least you've had a go, you've tried it. Be consistent, give it to them every day, like every day. It takes time. It's not a magic bullet, it's not a magic switch on pill, but it does work, and it does help. It helps us. I feel so much more positive about Freddie's future now that we've got this diagnosis and we know what we're dealing with. I feel like we've got stuff to help him. I think I've said before about the cranial sacral therapy and the kinesiology, all gone hand in hand with helping Freddie. And I definitely think people should, try those as well. And if you can't, I know not everyone can get to a kinesiologist and things, but I would try this. It's really, really good. And I know that, it comes to cost, and I know life's quite expensive at the moment, but for us, I think for an adult, it's about $2.53 a day. So Freddie has a half, so it's about $1.30. For us, we get so much value for Freddie. It's helped us so much, and for him, so we don't really see it as a cost. And there are other ways. You can talk to you about getting credits and things like that. So I just think you've got nothing to lose by trying it. If you do try it, give it every day, be really consistent. It will help. And actually, maybe you could tell about the p values, about the 10,000 people. I thought that was really interesting the other day.
It is really interesting. No, it is really interesting. And it's in one of our studies that was done, that showed how effective this, this little yellow pill is. And I don't remember the exact details, but it's about basically it's about the effectiveness. And I know I've heard Dr. Nancy Bryan, who's one of our doctors, talk about this p-value and talk about and she was a pharmacist, and she said it's really incredible to have a natural health product like NRF2, which is made of plants, to have the same result in almost every single person that takes it. And that's what sort of makes NRF2, protandim NRF2, stand out, is because it does have the same results. And that's what that P level is about. It's about that it does work. They say that it works in everybody, from 20-year-olds to 80-year-olds to to kids. It works in everybody. That's what the science tells us. But I can definitely share that study and that information with anybody that wants to know more. But yeah, thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your story. And I feel super grateful that you said yes. And and people often talk about the cost, but actually being sick is also a huge cost as well. And and if Freddie was still struggling at school, then having days off work as a mum, who's also got another part-time job, and that all of those costs add up, and often it's those sorts of things that we don't factor in. And as you say, like there's lots of pieces of the puzzle to people's health and wellness puzzle. So this is not the only thing we suggest you try, but it's definitely, for my family, it was the missing piece, of the puzzle. And, and so it's been incredible and relatively simple. Just really, really awesome to hear your story, Rachel. And I can't wait to share this with others, because you don't know who's going through the same thing that you were, or that you are. And as you say, there's an amazing product here for people to try, and there's also the business opportunity as well that people can build in the nooks and crannies of their life. Absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we close off, Rachel?
No, I just think, reach out if you want more information. And even if you're a teacher and you're dealing with a child at school, that perhaps, talk to the parents, or you've got friends or family. It's just the more knowledge, the better, really. So we're just sort of learning still. This is a big journey for us, but I feel so much more positive about it now, to be honest. Yeah.
And isn't that amazing? That you're getting, I love, and that's when I talk about the simplicity of it, I love that you're getting the support you need as a busy mum with 3 kids, for your brain fog and things, and Freddie's getting support, with his health and his brain health, and you're taking the same things, rather than having a whole list of supplements and different things that, that you've got to try and work out, okay, who needs what, and, you're actually, you're taking the same things, but yet it's serving your individual needs. It's meeting your body where your body's at. That's definitely something really cool. So thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your story today. And I'm going to stop recording this. And as Rachel said, if you want any more details, please reach out. And we would love to chat to anybody else who wants to know more.